Okay, Nick Dutch back on the camera yet again, still going through the same Wikipedia article, commenting based upon, well, the article is on natural science methodology. I'm commenting on this from a supernaturalist and occultist point of view, and suggesting how we could actually be a little more scientific when we're looking at the supernatural, and indeed how we can actually still be scientific when we're investigating phenomenon. And yeah, I'm injecting some of my own personality into this because basically it's late at night, I've got another 5 hours worth of work to do, what the hell. Alright, the article goes on. Scientific method depends upon increasingly more sophisticated characterizations of the subjects of investigation. The subjects can also be called unsolved problems or the unknowns. So in scientific methodology there is the admittance that there are some things which are unknown within a lot of experimental situations. For example, Benjamin Franklin correctly characterized St. Elmo's fire as electrical in nature, but it has taken a long series of experiments and theories to establish this. Alright, so we can, as amateurs, so to speak, suggest that there is certain phenomena of the world which occur under certain characteristics. But that will then need to be established in greater detail with the passage of time. While seeking the pertinent properties of the subjects, this careful thought may also entail some definitions and observations. The observations often demand careful measurements and or counting. The systematic, careful collection of measurements or counts of relevant quantities is often the critical difference between pseudosciences such as alchemy and science, such as chemistry or biology. Alright, we're going to stop right there just for a moment. Because this is another problem that we have within the New Age world, because people who have a religious bent will tend to just use religious definitions and essentially stop there, which is bad. I mean, a lot of the methodologies of dealing with the supernatural, the New Age, the occult, and all the rest of it relies upon religious methodologies such as meditation and prayer, which I've already mentioned in previous videos. But that doesn't mean to say that we're dealing with purely imaginary or spiritual beings. It could well be that we're dealing with things of an electrochemical or bioplasmic nature or plasmic nature. We just don't know, but we can make some extrapolations. We can't say those extrapolations are totally solid at this stage. With the example given earlier on of St. Elmo's fire, and applying that to, let's say, spiritual healing energy, we could say that spiritual healing energy is, or moves in a way which is analogous to a plasma or to a fluid, and seems to have some kind of electromagnetic component to it. But we can't, that has not been investigated properly for us to be able to say so. With this particular statement, we do find things a little more complex. I mean, the natural sciences are different to the social sciences, and this article is written primarily from a natural science standpoint, but the social sciences are still very important. I mean, sociology and psychology I'm talking about here mainly, but of course there can always be a crossover to neuroscience or obviously biology. So natural scientists could investigate an occultist or a set of occultists purely from the biological and neurological point of view. And in my personal experiments, I do tend to look at this from a biological and neurological point of view, incorporating the things which I am most familiar with and have experienced a lot of, such as changes in brainwave frequency brought about by brainwave entrainment technology. So I am still trying to be scientific, but I'm approaching this from a brain chemistry and neuroprogramming type points of view. Scientific measurements are taken usually tabulated, graphed, or maps, and statistical manipulations such as correlations and regression performed upon them. This could still happen with the occult if we were to use social science methodology and statistical data, rather than just counting brainwave activity, although brainwave activity is still an important thing to analyze. Well, of course, we're dealing with the whole human being. I'm not advocating holistic medicines or holistic models of the world when I'm saying this. We are dealing with the whole human being, which is incredibly complex. The measurements might be made in a controlled setting such as a laboratory, or made on more or less inaccessible or unmanipulable objects such as stars or human populations. Well, yeah, I'm very in favor of using controls in experimentation as well, and they need to be planned out very carefully so that there can be no criticism of the experiment itself, but that can still be done, I feel. The measurements often require specialized scientific instruments such as thermometers, spectrometers, or voltmeters, or, in the case of what I'm interested in, EEG machines would be an ideal technology to use when dealing with supernatural phenomena and the way it affects people, allegedly, as well as more slightly anti-positivistic ideas, such as using a Likert 5-point scale, so you can measure different people's reactions to stimuli or apparent stimuli. And the progress of the scientific field is usually intimately tied to their investigation and invention and development. So essentially, more technology may have to be invented in order for us to be able to develop a more analytical understanding of the supernatural world as well as the natural world, because what I label the supernatural world is something which seems to happen within the world, therefore it is a natural phenomenon, not necessarily something which is outside of humanity. It's still somehow part of humanity, and therefore still somehow part of the natural world. We're about halfway through the article so far. Measurements in scientific work are also usually accompanied by estimates of their uncertainty. The uncertainty is often estimated by making repeated measurements of the desired quantity. Alright, so then that's another place where statistical methodology can come into play, so you can work out a baseline and then see whether there can be any increase above that and see whether that increase is in fact statistically significant, which is what essentially I originally wanted to do with the James Randi Educational Foundation. However, they have not got back to me, which is unfortunate. Uncertainties may also be calculated by consideration of the uncertainties of the individual underlying quantities that are used. Counts of things such as the number of people in a nation at a particular time may also have an uncertainty due to limitations of the method used. Counts may only represent a sample of desired quantities with an uncertainty that depends upon the sampling method used and the number of samples taken. Okay, the sampling method used, that's another thing which is important within social and psychological sciences. For instance, if you want to work out, excuse me a minute, what the vast majority of people in a nation think, let's say politically speaking, and you only interview 5% of the white middle class population between the ages of 45 and 46, you're not going to get a representative sample. Therefore your data and the results of your experiment are going to be completely skewed, and therefore it's not going to be a scientific study. So you need a socially stratified sample taking into account all the various groups, the populations of each and every single different group, and then drawing conclusions based upon that. So the sampling and reporting methods that you use are actually essential in all forms of scientific endeavor, and there's no reason to say that we shouldn't actually think carefully about that when we're looking into apparently supernatural phenomenon as well. Alright, back in just a moment.